I bring you today Dr. Sam Graver. Dr. Sam, how are you?
Hi, I am absolutely wonderful, and thank you for such a lovely introduction. I'm excited to have this conversation even more now.
Uh, well, how can it not be a wonderful introduction if I'm talking about you? Right?
Oh,
It's like I
so
am
sweet.
so honored that you are a part of our smart and healthy entrepreneur community.
Hmm.
And I wanted to share with our community how we met. We actually met in community, right?
Yes.
Over a year ago.
Yeah.
And it is interesting because I do believe that like attracts like, right? Because
I
we,
do too.
as I was going through this path, it's almost like you came into my world.
Hmm.
That was when I needed to hear those messages. And now we get to share it with others too.
I
So
love
how
it.
wonderful.
Yes.
So, so tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell her to introduce yourself, Dr. Sam. How Tell me about your path into becoming an entrepreneur and starting this practice.
Sure. Well, it kind of started from, if I go way back into the early 90s when I did my chiropractic studies. We're kind of primed to become a business owner, yet we're not really taught how to be a business owner. I always found it interesting that many of my courses that were taught on practice management and how to run a business were taught by people who had never been in business, which was really a big disservice to us. And that's a whole other topic. But over time, I became a very skilled physician, excellent diagnostician, excellent at taking care of people, but it was very hard to do all that and wear the hat of business owner, CEO, CFO, see all the O's. It was a big, big challenge. And so being in the healing profession that many people can probably relate to this, it's hard to, or it's challenging to balance the two between making money and doing good and providing all these services. So that was sort of the beginning of my entrepreneur journey where I realized, wait a minute, I have a business. I got to figure out how to run this bad boy. And I will tell you, quite honestly, my first couple, I ran into the ground because I didn't know what I was doing. And I had all the best intentions, did not know what I didn't know. So that was very illuminating, very humbling, but really necessary. Some of the best growth is expensive, and that is what that was. But now I'm able to shift into mentor and coach mode to be able to help others really navigate it without going through all the same pitfalls. That is if they're humble enough to be coached and coachable, right?
I love that. I love that uh, caveat, right? Or that kind of really very important variable into being coachable. This,
Hmm.
there's so much wisdom in what you have shared, Dr. Sam. And I love that it comes from your own personal experience, and that I am sure that many of our female entrepreneur listeners are relating to it and going like, yes, I've either had the same experience, or I'm going through it, or I'm
Yeah.
figuring it out.
Hmm.
So, and that's the beauty of having these conversations, because it inspires. Like right now I feel inspired by you
Yeah.
and your trajectory, and I'm going like, yes, exactly. Many women, especially in the holistic health industry, right? Or you're servicing so much, but you might not have the skills or the training or the interest in running your business. A lot of it is kind of
Sure.
like, oh, it's a scary thing, so we don't do it.
Yes.
And on the other hand, we have other female entrepreneurs who are very skilled and trained, and they own it, the business part, but we ignore a lot about our health, right? And so
Sure.
it's this balance of the two. And one of the things that I love is your self-discovery, right? Because you made a decision when I read your bio to retire from your chiropractic practice, right? To
Yeah.
look at it more holistically, and now you are focused specifically on that midlife stage where we are so much change is undergoing, and sometimes
Hmm.
we don't even know why these changes are going. We think that that it's just us, but let's normalize the conversation, right? So
Right.
why
Right.
have you focused on your expertise? Tell me on menopause, and how do you best prepare, and how to best prepare to navigate it holistically?
Sure. I love it. And thank you for the chance to really talk about it more from my heart versus from the, the marketing stage, which that's the other part of business is you can be really great at what you do, but if you cannot transfer that experience to somebody else and get them thinking about it through marketing, you can be the best kept secret. And the reason I switched into menopause and perimenopause is because, again, of personal experience. Like, here I am at that point, I was 25 years into this career, highly educated, probably overly educated as far as the books and, just all that knowledge that you never use again. But I had this firm foundation of an understanding of physiologically what's going on, from the back end or behind the curtain, so to speak. I could walk you through every hormonal change, every little tweak to it, how they all, work together in this ideal cataclysmic world of, ideal hormonal stuff. And then reality hits and there is no predictability to it. There is no harmony at times. I'm working on a talk that I call from havoc to harmony, because it can be very laden in havoc, and it feels like these hormones are wreaking havoc on your life. And then so we've got that side, the physiological side, and then we've got this stuff that comes up from your past, the
Mm.
emotional things, right? The
Oh my
trauma, the
gosh.
big T trauma, the little T trauma, all that stuff. And I heard it said, and I cannot remember the person, I need to look it up again, but who said it's that time when all the, she uses the F word, but when all the flips you didn't give in the past come back to roost, and it's like they all come back simultaneously. So sometimes,
Wow.
we finally start slowing down a little bit, meaning not us physically, but life might slow down a bit. The kids are through school, maybe you've got the quote unquote empty nest, or your kids just aren't needing you as much. And if we've, raised them to be more independent, yay. But then you're just kind of sitting with your thoughts a little bit more. And then here comes one runs through and you're like, ooh, haven't thought of that in a while. And then another one comes through, and next thing you know, you're just being barraged by them. And that's what happened to me. And I thought, oh my gosh, is this what a mental breakdown means? Because I think I'm in one. I
Oh,
literally thought, right?
yeah.
I thought it was, whoa, okay, now I get it. But because I had all that experience, and I, again, very knowledgeable on all these things, I've taken all the courses, I've studied with the big gurus. I was completely just sideswiped by it. And I didn't know who to talk to. I would talk to some friends and they had no idea what I was talking about. And I think so many people are just numb. They're walking around numb, and I was feeling every freaking little thing. And it was overwhelming. So
Wow.
yeah, like I had to get myself kind of regrounded because I was pretty grounded. I had to get regrounded and I had to do all this work myself. And I thought, I feel like I went through all of this to then be able to help usher other women along and to help them explain to the men and women in their lives that, this is what's going on with me and this is the support I need right now. And then tying that into what you're eating and not eating can make all the difference. So that's kind of a long answer to how I got into this part and why I'm focusing here.
But it's so important, these details that you're
Mm.
sharing, because I'm going kind of like, yes, oh yeah, oh really?
Mm.
Like as you're going through all of this, so many things are coming to mind. And as you're unraveling all of these parts, right? And you're
Yes.
really experiencing, I'm kind of thinking, oh, so I'm not alone, right?
Correct.
or
Yeah.
or even like an anticipation, and it gives me, at least personally, I feel, and I believe others might feel that way, even if you haven't started this way, but it gives you a little bit of a relief that it's like, oh, okay, well, when I go through it, like there's some help, right? Or there's some resources.
Mhm.
This part about not having the conversation or not knowing who to go to, and more importantly, Dr. Sam, as you're sharing it, is that you could be the most knowledgeable person and inform yourself, but it's going to be your own personal experience. And not
Yes.
until you experience it do you actually gain the wisdom that you're talking about, right?
Right.
It's kind of like where you're
Right.
really kind of going like, hey, I am not a textbook. I am not meant to be a textbook. I'm not meant to
Right.
be that level of print perfection, right?
Right.
And the other thing that caught my attention tremendously was the traumas of the past,
Mm-hmm.
because I have recently, like actually attained my meditation teacher
Hmm.
certification. And part of it was this trauma healing that I spent a lot of time working on myself and
Sure.
identifying kind of like, whoa, this is one is like I wasn't aware, and
Yeah.
two, because you don't want to put labels on it, right? And then the other thing is number two is that the impact, right? Where does it live in your body? All these different
Right.
things. So can we talk a little bit about
Sure.
that, Dr. Sam? Why you bring in this, like trauma and the effects of it into perimenopause, menopause, or our hormones?
Hmm. Well, I think that it's a natural stage. Not to get too into the weeds. I get into the weeds in my courses and teach people, whatever level you want. Like I'm like, we want to throw down real detailed. Let's do it. We
Yes.
want to do a surface. Well, alrighty then. So this will be more that surface. So as we're transferring from our premenopause, which is when we're in that more fertile stage, and that can vary depending on the person, but we're in that typical monthly cycle stage. So we have, the hormones, they have kind of it's more predictable, let's say, at that time. So we've got a dominant kind of estrogen then, and then that estrogen starts to kind of, fizzle out or deplete out. And then we have a different type of estrogen that comes up, and then she sort of takes over at that time. And I call her the inner creatrix, because she is that type of estrogen that really helps us weed through a lot of those things from our past. I'll often say it's coming to grips and accepting the past and leaving it where it is, being grounded in the now. That's what our meditation can do a lot for us, and then designing a life in your future that you really want to be living. And that's where this inner creatrix comes in. So there's like the archetypes, but then there's literally physiology that follows through with that. And that's how I kind of bring that all together. And it's a wonderful way for someone to tap into the physiology that's also occurring in the background. And our physiology can be an ally, or it can be an enemy in a way, where if we're not eating in the way that our body is designed to be nourished, we don't eat just to have energy. We eat for nourishment. And we also eat for celebration. We sometimes eat when we're, not celebrating, when we're sad or when things are going on. And those are those times to interrupt those patterns and catch ourselves and, look at nourishing versus going down a non-nutritive route. But then sometimes the issue is we're eating too much and too often, and we're not giving our body a break to go in and do the recycling that is part of our body's, to-do list, is recycling old materials and turning over to new ones and getting rid of things that, seen their better days. But if we're constantly taking on energy and constantly eating, because we've been taught eat 2 to 3 meals a day and snack all day long, like you are a grazing little ruminant animal, but we are not. We are meant to have times, and it's significant amount of time, where we're not taking on nutrition or energy or things that prompt our body to think, oh, food's coming, so I will start priming the pump for insulin.
Mm.
And insulin resistance is literally one of the deepest foundations for chronic disease. And it's hyperinsulinemia, meaning we have too much insulin in our blood. And that is rampantly being tied back to the majority of chronic disease and inflammation that we have. Yet people don't know that they are, by following conventional wisdom and the status quo, eat, 2 to 3 meals a day and eat all day long, we're actually fanning the flames of inflammation instead of extinguishing them.
Wow. There
Hmm.
is like so much here that I want to like break it down and go through
Sure.
the details. And I'm thinking we need a mastermind class with you or
Yes.
something
Well,
else
I've got
because
that. Yep. In my group.
absolutely.
Yep. I've
Yes,
got two.
because
I've got the metabolism and the menopause. So
yeah,
yes.
Yes,
Mhm.
and this is what you're talking about. What we're talking about is like how our metabolic health
Mhm.
and that our menopause experience are interconnected.
Yes.
Is that correct? When you're
Correct.
when you're really looking at that connection between, how we process food or how and what we put in our bodies, and so many different philosophies. I'm going to share from my own personal experience. There was something that was working for me. I was like, during my 40s, I've probably had my healthiest life ever.
Ooh.
Where I started, the intermittent fasting before that even became a
Mhm.
thing, but also doing a lot of like cleansing, like
Mhm.
hormonal rebalancing and cleansing. And then all of a sudden, life happens, right?
Yeah.
I left my job to start my business.
Mhm.
And then, there's like the busyness of it, right? And it's like, and I started noticing that it's like, oh, okay, number one, what I was doing wasn't working that well. I lost my routine, very hard to get back in routine. And then now, as I'm like soon to approach my 50s, because at the end of this month, I'm actually turning 50, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, and there's like this whole new phase where it's like, try
Yes.
this, do that, not do that. And my mind is just kind of like, ah, do this, don't do that. And the restrictions, are stressing my body. And actually, my acupuncturist said to me, it's kind of like, throw everything away and relax your body. Like,
Mhm.
eat whatever you want. And I was like, what? So, and actually started working, right? Started sleeping better. I started,
Mhm.
so can you talk about, this experience, for example, that I'm just sharing with you? Because I find like there's so many different conventional ways of thinking and also some new ways of thinking, and sometimes we don't know what suits us best. What would be your recommendation for someone in my shoes?
Yeah, and that's where really learning you is where that comes in. So in my world, I teach people what's going on behind the metabolic curtain so they understand what cellular health means, because that is what we want to eat for. We want to promote cellular health because we are just a big conglomeration of cells. So if we have our cells themselves are healthy, they're able to usher the nutrients in through a very permeable health, well, I should say a level of health permeability of that cell to allow the good things in, but also to let the yucky stuff out. Because another part that happens in by midlife is we've accumulated toxins over time. It's just they've caught up with us by this point. And that can be from what we wear on our skin, that can be what we breathe in from our house, scents that we use, exhaust, depending where you live. I mean, there's so many different factors, but the majority of those things that we put on our skin, about 60% is absorbed through our skin. So it's all of these things coming together.
Like
And
our
that's
hair
why I
products, right? Like
all the stuff.
moisturizer.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
don't
So
even notice it until someone points it out. And
correct.
I remember being resistant to it at first, and that was when I moved to Canada, and
Okay.
and I loved my like the scents and the like
Oh
all these
yeah.
different things that I would buy from very well known brands and all this stuff, and then I
Mhm.
started becoming more mindful about the natural
Yeah.
products, right? And so you're bringing that to attention that it's like, yeah, but we don't always know what's in what we
Right.
eat or what all these different things, right? Yeah.
Right. And your body walls off the toxins from the life and death stuff through our body fat. So that is really a buffer for it,
Mhm.
for keeping the toxins away from your heart and your brain and all the things that we definitely don't want the toxins to get into. And then our poor liver gets overtaxed because she's like, oh, one more thing I got to deal with. So she's trying to do her job and she never gets a break. So I really anthropomorphize or kind of give a life to each of these different parts of us that are simultaneously trying to do the job, but they can work so much better and when we create synergy. So that is, not putting the stuff in our body helps us not have to process it out. But then we have things like estrogen dominance that comes in. That is something that many of us deal with because of environmental things and the fact that we're not processing estrogen the way a healthy body can and can do, even if you're not processing it well now, there's nothing that's permanent to that disordered processing. It's just we need a certain sequence of things to, happen over time to then prioritize or allow that healing to happen. The healing happens inside. It's not a pill. I think we all know that probably, on this call, or, obviously you and I know that, but we lose sense of that, and we think,
Mhm.
oh, if there was only a magical detox. There's not. If there was only a magical, shake or replacement thing, there's not. There's none of that. There's no magic. The magic's within, if we want to call it magic.
Yeah, it's so many layers, right? I'm thinking
Mhm.
habits, I'm
Very
thinking
much.
mental state, I'm thinking, even
Mhm.
the habitual thoughts, right? And processes and letting go from so much.
Yes.
Our belief mechanisms play a factor in it, right? A lot of the emotional state and the physical state, and we can talk
Yes.
about. I
And the
love this. Like
stress.
I'm like love
Right.
this. It's like this is my jam. We can talk
Mhm.
about it with, and
Right.
and it is so interesting. I mean, there are so many layers in this that we will have to like do more podcasts perhaps later on,
Absolutely.
or listen to your podcast here too,
Yes.
right? And so tell us a little bit about, who is who do you work with, right? Ideally, you said someone coachable, right?
Yep.
And who is open to change, right?
Yes.
So who would benefit the most from working with you?
The most immediately would be someone who is in perimenopause right now, and who is starting to feel the pressure, who's feeling like, all right, I'm doing what I think are the things, how we say we're doing all the things, that they feel like they're doing what they quote unquote should be doing, and it's just not helping them.
Mm,
So they're in action. They're not just thinking or theorizing or collecting data. They're actually doing the things that they think will help, or they've been told will help. But there's some things are just missing. Like these things just aren't firing together, because then that person is open to something new because they're having the discomfort still, but they're actively trying to make the changes. So that's really the person that, plugging into my ecosystem, that person excels so beautifully. And then right thereafter would be that person who wants to prepare well for perimenopause, or, is probably going through it, but doesn't realize it yet because maybe they're, some of these things that are happening, they're not real loud messages yet, but they want to proactively go into it and say, all right, so Dr. Sam says this and this and this is going to happen. Let's go head on and let's, tackle this proactively and preemptively. I love to work with people like that, because those, again,
yeah,
are those
yeah.
action takers. They're the people that are already thinking a few steps ahead, but are acting in the now. And then I love to work with people who've already been through menopause as well, to help kind of make sense of some of what's happened, because you often get through it and you think,
Mm.
ooh, survived it. I hear this story very often.
Oh,
Ooh, I made it through and I had no
yes.
idea what was happening, but I still have lingering things going on. So I love to help that as well.
So I am hearing here that
Hmm.
is prevention,
Hmm.
right? And then it's about integration,
Yeah.
right? When you're talking about like, yes, I have the information, I'm doing the thing. And you're
Yes.
definitely looking for someone who's action driven, not excuse driven, right?
Right.
I'm like, listeners, all
Hmm.
my listeners, you are action driven. And then the last one is really more about like that reflection, right? And kind of like maybe more about survive, survive like post-traumatic stress, right? On the right. Might
Sure.
be a little bit of kind of like, in overall, I'm thinking a lot of integration with what you're saying. So that's a little bit of kind of like
Love
my marketing take on like simplifying it, right? All this stuff, but
Sure.
it's so
Yes.
amazing because I think we all need some help with any of these areas. Now, here's a question.
Mhm.
How do you know what symptoms are telling you that you're already in perimenopause? Or like, because is it age specific, or is there a range, or what
A
happens?
great
Like, I know a
question.
friend who got her menopause, she's in menopause and she is in her early 40s, right?
Sure.
So
Yeah.
what would be a good indication that you're undergoing perimenopause?
Sure. And I'll just kind of clarify some of the terminology, because we used to think, okay, you're in menopause and then you're postmenopause and boom, there you go. Menopause is technically an event. Menopause is 365 days of not having anything that resembles a period. So that's, just all those things that you would think of. And then perimenopause is that time frame, and the estimations are 5 to 10 years prior to our menopause, which again is an event. So I always say the menopause or your menopause. So prior to that, usually the first thing is changes in our periods, meaning like we're bleeding more often, more often or heavy periods, or sometimes even lighter. It depends on the person. Sometimes instead of if we were, I was like 28 days to the number. So if that started shifting, like all of a sudden I went longer and it was like, hello, pregnancy test. You didn't know, am I pregnant? Nope. Things start shifting. It could be more cramps or less. It's kind of like I just usually say it's a change in your normal, not
Mm,
the normal or quote unquote normal, because we all are so
yeah.
unique. So you kind of look at your previous months. I teach people to get in the habit of tracking their period and symptoms. And I don't even like that word symptom. It's usually just issues associated. But let's say there's some more you're a little more emotional at certain times. That's just kind of like your body and brain and your emotions hitting that valve of release valve,
Mm.
and it can be
Oh,
other things. Yeah, it can be other
I
things
like
like
how
a
you're
brain
framing it in
fog.
a way more
Mhm.
relatable. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And there's these averages. People say the average age at menopause is 51, which I'm knocking on, I just turned 51. So these are just averages. And
Yes.
some people can have it earlier based on either a medical history, definitely surgical. If someone, has a surgical intervention and has their ovaries removed and their uterus, then that puts you into a surgical menopause. And that's a big issue because often doctors don't quite prepare you enough. And they just say, and you're going to go into menopause. And you're like, oh, okay, no more periods, fine. But there's this whole cataclysmic, entourage that comes with that because
Yeah.
it's not just the cessation of of the hormones. It's all the rest of your body has to go through a detox basically from the one estrogen into the next one. And it's a very complex thing. It's not necessarily complicated, but it's very complex. But the great thing is you don't have to know how all that works. You don't have to become a PhD or an MD or a DC or any
Oh,
of that,
phew.
any
I was
D. Yeah, you don't need any D's in any of this stuff. That's why I created the no feel do methodology, is to help people know and get their feelings all aligned and then get into action. And it's
Oh,
a very simple, process or methodology that I've created, but it just helps you walk through the system, apply it to yourself, and do it on a regular basis, but also with the understanding of figure out how to make it work for you. Figure how to personalize it for you based on information and putting it into action and then documenting the results you get. Like we would do in our business, like we ideally do in many of the things that matter to us. We just all too often kind of make our body and our brain and our experience an afterthought. Like I'll take care of me later. You may not have later. So let's do it now.
what a great message.
Hmm.
What a great message. Thank you so much and it applies, yes, just in every area, but specifically starting with ourselves, right? Like don't put a hold on your own well-being because
Right.
it's gonna like just gonna create this catastrophic thing, in every other area of
Mhm.
your life too, right? Or
Right.
just
Yeah.
messes up with things, right? And stuff. But
Right.
it always starts with ourselves, right? It's all like all of the best relationships and business and well-being, right? So this is
Hmm.
so great. So Dr. Sam, where can our listeners find you? Of course, Dr. Sam is in the She community, so you can go to she-community.com. She's one
Hmm.
of our founding members and very active in the community. And what else? Where else can they find you?
There are a couple different ways. They can go to my website, which is drsamgraber.com. It's in a little bit of a revamp stage, which I'm super excited about. I'm looking forward to launching that and revealing. But if you want to be part of the conversation that I'm actively having each and every day, that's on LinkedIn. I focus there. I used to try to do the Facebook and the Insta and the this, all the, it was just too much. And my people that I really like to work with and I know that are looking to improve their businesses, improve upon themselves, expand their growth mindset, those people are on LinkedIn. And you just find me at Dr. Sam Graber on LinkedIn.
That is wonderful. I
Mhm.
love that. I love how simple it is, right? And what comes to mind is also is like you have a whole business expertise that that our learners, our listeners can learn from you as well. Even like what you just said is kind of like simplifying where you appear on social media, being very,
Yes.
very purposeful and mindful in your messages too. So, oh my goodness, you can poke on Dr. Sam's brain, or like you'll have these
Yes.
conversations on the She community. I
Mhm.
definitely follow your newsletters, and they're so worth it. You know, so so much value in them that every word is so intentional. I love it,
Thank you.
and so thank you so much, Dr.
You're
Sam. I know
welcome.
you have also a great initiative on LinkedIn about emphasizing, you know, the role, those who are in the role of diversity, equality, and inclusion, right? The DE&I in the workplace, and how your work also can support, you know, more inclusivity and equality, and bringing in more attention to women and leaders in undergoing, you know, in the midlife, right? In perimenopause and menopause. So
Right.
thank you for that.
Oh, and it's really that gives me such joy to help women understand that they are, you're working while human. And I want to help companies understand that if you truly value the women in your workforce and anyone who's going to experience perimenopause, you must be having, you don't have to necessarily have the conversation like person to person, but this must be something that is out and spoken of. It can no longer be just this unspoken, like we know everybody's going through it, but we're not talking about it.
Yes.
You have to help women understand that what's going on in their body is potentially something unfolding for them that can, if if you treat people well and really value them, you can tap into this whole new creative mind that this person is going to be unleashing if and when she's supported in a way that makes her really feel that you mean what you're saying. How many companies have these great websites like we support women, National International Day of the Woman, and they have all
Mhm.
these wonderful marketing messages, but when it comes down to the reality, it's not there.
Yeah. Yeah, we have
Yeah.
to break through some taboos. And again, my heart
Mhm.
goes out to all of those leaders that have come before me and that have mentored me. And
Mhm.
because now I understand, you know, what you were going through, all this kind of stuff. So,
Yes.
but here comes Dr. Sam to the rescue for the future leaders too. I love it. So
Thank you.
thanks once again. And for my listeners, thank you so much for your attention here. Go to the she-community.com. You can find Dr. Sam Graver is actually featured on my website as well. And come and join the community. If you haven't joined it yet, you can try it for free for 14 days. And then if this is, you're going to find so much value. And if this is for you, you're welcome to join us. Have a wonderful, fantastic day. Bye for now.